Is there any way you'd like to be introduced, Jordan? Once you're done with this.
No particular way. Part of life.
The orgasm. This is Jordan Rock, the orgasmic breath artist, creating orgasms and making art with his lungs.
Maybe be present. Maybe be loving.
Maybe be authentic, vulnerable, and share exactly what those who listen need to hear. We're back. This is the Blissed Out Podcast. It's a very special podcast because we have our first guest. My name's Zach.
I'm Mark.
And this is Jordan.
That's me.
Jordan Rock. Jordan, we're grateful to have you as our first guest. It's something we've been wanting to do for a while, and it all came together. So that being said, we'd love to just know a little bit about you. I mean, we obviously know you really well. You're our brother, my roommate, and yeah, maybe how we met and where we're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Zach and I met, we met through a friend of mine, Ian, who I met at Hidden Oasis, which was a really cool experience for me, where I connected to a lot of people who were really, they're people going through some challenges in their life and, wanting to sort through those. So, a lot of people go there. And there's also some very intensely present and loving people there. Met Ian there, and then Ian invited me over to a party. He was like, "Oh, you want to come over to my buddy's house?" And then we just went to this place in South Jordan, which is funny because it was just down the street from where I was. I had a house when I was married. It was just down the street from that. And we go in the backyard, and it's just me and Ian and then this dude. And I was like, okay, cool. But we started chatting, and just instantly, I was just I just felt resonance with him. I was just and I was at the time, I just moved into a new house, I think a couple months ago, or maybe even, I can't remember what month it was, but maybe it was even a month ago. And I was just looking for roommates, and I was like, I don't want to put a post up for roommates. I don't want to just have any random person. I'm the universe will show me. And then when I went there, I was he was talking about moving out, and I was I didn't even know him, but I was just I feel like this dude is just just similar resonance. And yeah, the rest is history. Just what, 2 months later, a month later, we did a breath work together at our friend Misty's house. A week later or something like that, and it was a whole group, and it was so powerful. That was just it was awesome. So that's how we came to be in each other's lives, and it's been such an incredible friendship. There's we've just seen a lot of growth in each other, and fostered that within each other, and then there's just so much resonance on so many levels, and it's really cool to be. It's really cool to be roommates with somebody who's just wants to meditate, wants to do breath work. It's just that's what I'm really interested in. That's one of my main focuses in life, because it's you just want to feel even more connected.
Mm. Yeah, so that was August of 23.
Yeah.
And then moved in, and then next April or May, we met Mark at the same time.
Oh, so you moved in August of 23. Okay, yeah.
And then we met in late spring of 24.
Yeah, how did we meet? You met him first, right? And then you brought him to a hike, wasn't it?
No. He came to our breathwork class.
I was at your guys' breathwork
The one that
class.
we taught.
Yeah.
Oh, but how did you get an invite to that?
Through Zachariah.
Oh, Zachariah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how we all met, which is
Cool.
freaking awesome.
Yeah. And then, I just spent a lot of time together, and a lot of meditation together, which is And we were just talking about this before we started video, but just the joy and the power that comes from meditating in a group. Like it's just inspiring, and it's like it's just a constant energy feedback loop, like building on each other. And so we still do it all the time, and it's not going to stop. Let's start this episode off with a little bit of good news. We know there's a lot of not so good news out there, so we want to just kind of change that and start off the podcast with some love. So Jordan, like, give us one thing that was good that happened to you this last week, or just something inspiring, whatever you feel.
I'm just glad to be alive. I'm just glad to be, upright and taking in oxygen. That's really the only thing I've got. I try to, allow my mind to be clear, and, I'm not going to try to concern myself with what's going on in the world outside of what I can really directly influence. Because like if I'm trying to like take stuff in from the outside, and like what good does it do me to know the bad things that are going on? Like, sure, if I can like sign a petition or something, I get that makes sense. But like, I don't know, it's just if I can't show up to each interaction, like the most important thing for me is like showing up to each interaction with people and just like blowing their minds with genuine kindness. So yeah, I mean, that's not really good news, but it's
I had a feeling that was going to be your news as being alive.
Yeah.
That's but I agree. I feel like one of the most important things we can do right now is be love. Like, it's what we talk about in all of our podcasts, and it's what's making the biggest difference is coming together and loving each other as best we can.
Which is just like accepting people as they are, letting them feel whatever they're wanting to feel.
Yeah.
And just being present for that, not being like, I'm going to make you feel better. That doesn't allow them to move through it organically. It's just like, what's going on? I can see something's up. Tell me.
But you mentioned like showing up for people, and not like, it's something that you're really good at, what Jordan's really good at, and I've learned a lot from, and that's just listening. And it's one thing that is so important that is like so unpracticed. And I've read some cool books that talk about it a little bit, but like, give us like your understanding of the importance of listening when people are sharing something deep, because it happens a lot to you randomly with strangers, with close ones, with everybody you meet, because people feel safe to share them with you. And so share with us why it's important to listen and how you maybe do that.
Yeah, this is a great question. So what I've found is that people, they do want to express how they're feeling, but not be, I do my best to not encourage like any particular, what would be considered like a negative emotion. I'm not going to, I just want to be there as the receiver for I want to be witnessing what they are going through, observing it, because that brings awareness to it for them. And they're so used to having their story told, and then people are like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened, and I that sucks, and it's just like, that's terrible, and let me give you some advice, and it just kind of like keeps them stuck in that. You kind of get wound around that experience, and it doesn't feel healthy. So what I found is that it's just the best thing that I can do is, if somebody starts going on something, it's just like where I can feel them like needing to unload. I work to keep a lot of space within myself, like a very spacious mind, so I can just empty my mind and be like the total blank slate, and I listen deeply, right? I listen to the musicality of their voice, the beauty of their voice, just like I look at them deeply, I feel the source of life within them, that's like might be struggling, or it's right there but beneath the surface. And I really work to feel their heart, through my own heart, and to remember that is also, we're intimately interconnected. It's like just since we've been sitting here, we've breathed in each other's DNA. So we're literally the same, in our air, everything is interconnected. So I just look at it as like an opportunity to let someone kind of let out their stuff and let it echo out into empty space that can see that's like loving empty space, right? Not like not here, but present. And then people will shift on their own, right? That allows, and it's empowering. That's my goal. If we can call it that, is like my goal with people is to not be needed. I don't want anyone to need me. I want them to like have self-realization of like, oh, like I am actually like, I feel okay and like good within myself. Mm-hmm. And like you're promoting that within me instead of like I'm dependent on you for that feeling, right? I don't want people to be dependent on me for that feeling. I want to create independence within, well, we're interdependent, right? But I want to create a sense of sovereignty within each individual that I encounter, so that they know that like when I'm gone, they could still feel okay. They could still feel that sense of just like calm peacefulness. Because that's what's missing in so many of our lives, is this sense of calm peacefulness. Because that's kind of like a background that you can rest in. You can always come back to calm peacefulness. I just like the thought. I mean, like if, for example, like my grandfather died recently, I wasn't happy that he passed away, but I felt at peace with it, right? And so it's just like I can have these situations where somebody might be feeling a lot of pain, and I can feel at peace with it and accepting, so that it's kind of like, if we look at it as a vibration, if I'm putting up any sort of resistance or wall, the vibration is just going to keep going back and forth, right? It doesn't, and especially if I add to it, it's just going to keep, the vibration is going to keep going. Amplifying. Whereas if I open my gates and I become transparent, I let everything flow through me, right? And I become the loving, open space that holds them gently, openly, right, with an open hand, then they feel supported. And that is the best that's the best thing that I can do for anybody, is to be that loving space, right? Not to try to change their vibration, to realize that their peaceful vibration is already within them. And so that all I'm doing is I'm there to cultivate that within them, or just reflect it. That's a great word.
Yeah, so that's really cool, and you've helped me through a lot of things by just being that space. Jordan, when you hold the space for someone when you're listening to someone, do you feel what they're feeling usually with that piece? Like, so empathy is what that's considered, right? Yes. So in a way, you're empathizing with how they're feeling. But you're not reacting to how they're feeling, because we kind of talked about this on the last episode, where people came at us angry over something and we didn't react. We're holding space for that like anger to kind of like, I like that visual you expressed, almost like sound waves, like coming at it. It's like just moving through us. It's like when their ego, or whatever you want to call it, is seeking a reaction based on these patterns of their old experiences. Mm-hmm. And so the way I interpret these listening as an open space on a quantum level is you're able to shift the paradigm, or help this person shift the paradigm by changing the experience, because we're co-creating our experience. And so when someone unloads, it's like they're used to hearing, "Oh, I'm so sorry," like like that's so sad. Like, and it's like you said, it's an amplification back at them, and it's like often doesn't help. Like I hear stories about people at funerals with their own parent, like for their own parents, and like someone very close to me shared this. Like they were almost holding space for the people coming to their parents' funeral.
Yeah.
Because because it was like, and I've also heard like people don't want to hear I'm so sorry about your loss. Like just come
Right,
in,
that's
come
a
in
platitude.
come in love and embrace and be there. And like you're so good at like being silent and holding space, you know?
That's the key right there, is to be able to be silent with another so they can finish what they're saying, let them finish their thought, and then let the echo still, right? Let the vibrations end and just be like,
This is so cool.
and I breathe that in, right? I just like, I allow that. And this is a very rare, you just don't see this very often.
Right.
Right? Because it can make people uncomfortable. It's a total interrupt. It's a complete interrupt. And sometimes I'm better at it than others, right? Depending on the social setting, right? But when I can just be mindful of like, oh yeah, this is where I'm going to be, just surrender any thought of who I am and just be the receiver for a little bit. I work to open my body language. That's helpful too,
Yeah.
right? I open my hands.
It's huge.
I'll sit open-handedly and I'll just be, right? So I'm like, and I'm like, I don't fidget as much as I can, right? It's like, I work to be just present and still in body, still in mind. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that really helps them to like just feel that. And it's amazing what people will walk themselves through when you talk to them. Like they'll just solve their own problems a lot.
Wow, yeah.
So it's like, and it does feel good to be that person that like has, that is constantly coming to you and, like you're solving their problems. Like that can feel good. And they can get attached to you, and then that's, I wouldn't say mistaken for friendship, but it becomes a form of a bond. But these are bonds that are over the long term not building sovereignty; they're building dependence.
Yeah.
So like sovereignty says, I love you and I want to be in your presence when you're with me, and then when you go away, I want you to be your beautiful self. I want you to be you are your own source of love. You're your own source of peace. So that is the kind of the mindset behind showing up in this way, is so that the other person could be their own being, right? And that's an act of love, because this body's not going to last forever, right? I don't know how long it'll last. It's in pretty good shape. I take pretty good care of it. But, so it's like, and I don't know what life has in store for me. It could go in a few weeks or, 100 years. I don't know. But yeah, that's really just like, that is important to really build that for other people. And it does sometimes put me in a space where I'm not like, I don't have to, I'm not interacting with a million people all the time, because people don't need me, right? They're just like, they'll want to be in my presence. And so they'll come hang out with me. But for me, that works, because like, I like a lot of stillness and solitude in my life to come back into just total like disillusion of who this body thinks it is, right? I just like let that go away. And so to not have to constantly have a story with people is also helpful, right? It's like, it's cool to have it's like fun to have a story, but like when I can set that story down and go, it's just it's just part of this character, right?
Yeah, I mean, you are really, not many people can hold space like that. Not many people at all. People, like, to hold space where you're not, like, really even giving much feedback. You're just, like, listening to them. And that's really, I think, a lot of what people do need, because me and Zach have been through that, where we, like, we've tried to like help each other. Or I try to help him out sometimes, and then it like causes like excitement in us and kind of worry in us, And I think holding space and just letting someone like fully tell their story, and then kind of have a response after that. But yeah, holding space is just so uncommon, and yeah,
It's a gift, and I think it's a practice, right?
yeah, I feel like you do practice. Yeah,
And it's crazy because our experience was quite literally like a soundboard of build, and then I just like, oh my God,
I know, I
what did we
felt
just
this.
do?
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you one other thing, well, two things, and if we can try and keep them brief,
Yes.
so we can move to the next, because I actually love this topic, and I love that this topic came up.
Yeah.
It was unintentional, obviously, but
Yeah.
like how can we better show up for people in listening, and also like when there's times where it's like been too much, like too much coming at me of listening, and I have to like separate myself and like take a break. How can we, from your experience, how can we be better at listening, and also listening to ourselves, knowing when like we no longer have the capacity to hold that space?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mind if I sit with this question for a moment? Okay. Okay. So, as I had briefly mentioned before, for me, the body is a great way to like open body language because it's very obvious. It's very apparent, right? It's a physical manifestation. So it's just like, okay, I'm going to settle. I'm going to be open, right? So you're setting that intention by putting the body in a certain open position, open body language, not like this, right?
Yeah. It's like hugging yourself, so there's some sort of closed discomfort in that.
Exactly, and not looking away, looking at them, and so just that, comfortable eye contact with them, just really allowing them to be there. What else would there be here? It really is also not jumping in.
Yeah.
That's a powerful one. So there's all these pattern interrupts, right? Because it's just like how we're conditioned to communicate with each other, and sometimes what I can do can possibly make people feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I've gotten really good at like being okay with people being a little bit uncomfortable if it feels like it's for like something that's like really fostering growth. So it's just like if there's a little bit of discomfort, that's okay. I'm not trying to like make them uncomfortable purposely, but
Right. It's like
but it's just like
gentle.
there's gonna be differences in how I show up and how I talk to them. So it is like that. After they finish talking, sometimes I'll take a breath and just like go, And this is actually something that you might notice from really good podcasters. Theo Vaughn, I've heard him do that before. He'll just like,
Theo.
yeah, just like that. Like if it's just a very subtle audible sound, that's
It's
just
an
like,
acknowledgement.
it's an acknowledgement, but it's not an interruption. It's just like, yeah, keep going, right? That feeling of like, keep going. It's like, I'm listening, I'm engaged. It's just letting you know, but then they're not jumping in.
Yeah.
And that can be challenging. If it's just like something that you get excited about, I do,
Yeah.
Sometimes I jump in, sometimes I get excited. But if it's in like a something that someone really wants to like move through, it can be a lot easier for me to just go, okay, let me just let this settle and then let them shine the spotlight on them.
Yeah.
So I would say those things, that's long enough.
Yeah, I had an idea too, because like one thing I actually want to be better at is, because I have struggled with jumping in or going straight to advice, and I feel like it can be really helpful to ask questions, which is what you're really good at least, like with me. Also, one thing I've done a few times that has been really nice is like asking how you can best show up for someone. Like, I hear you, do you want advice or do you just want me to listen? You know,
That's a
because sometimes
one.
people don't want to hear anything. Like
Right.
from our experience, a lot of times you don't want advice from me, and we've came to that understanding. And so like a lot of times I will just acknowledge how you're feeling, and then I will, in my space, close my eye. Like the other day, like we were going snowboarding and you were moving through some emotions and things weren't flowing. And so I was like, okay, that's frustrating. I'm going to close my eyes and create this for us. Like I'm going to put my energy into our day.
Yeah.
And then boom, like not saying it was just all me, but like we
You
were able
did.
to like co-create
You
that
did shift
together,
that.
hold space for you to shift. And then it just like the floodgates opened.
Yeah.
So I think asking questions, getting to know what people want in terms of holding space is really good.
Yes. I agree.
So like obviously we're really I spend them out of everyone in the last like year. I've spent the most time with you probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. We're roommates.
Yeah.
And there's a few things that I know that you're good at and passionate, and that's listening. Like I've heard you say it multiple times.
Yep.
You love silence, and I would love to like kind of go into these subjects because it kind of highlights you.
Yeah.
Breath work and meditation. So we've kind of tackled listening, and I want to hear what silence means to you and why you feel silence is important.
Should my answer just be silence?
The 30 minutes of the podcast just
But isn't that so funny, right? This is what I find really funny about our society is that like, but just look at like how many people can be comfortable with silence.
Yeah.
It's like makes people uncomfortable.
yeah.
So that the fact that people are uncomfortable with silence is that's just like a red flag because that's the background that everything lives in is silence, right?
There's no noise without it.
Exactly. You have to have silence to have
Oh my
noise,
God.
right? That's the north side of the mountain needs the south side of the mountain. It just comes together, right? So silence is to be able to be comfortable with silence. It really, and again, it lends itself to listening, right? So it's like I can be comfortable with silence, and I can be comfortable with the thoughts going, right? Because sometimes this body wants things, right? Sometimes it's like, oh my God, that's a beautiful woman. I can't stop thinking about her, right? And that thought's going, and it's going. But like, I can also be aware that thought is going, which means that I'm the space in which that happens. That's silence, right? Space and silence are, Eckhart Tolle talks about this really well, but like space is the externalization of like inner space. And then like outer silence is is mirrored in inner silence, inner stillness. So yeah, silence is, and I really love this quote, silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation. This is a Rumi quote. And, even if you don't have to subscribe to God, it's just a word that's pointing at the source of life, right? The animating force or whatever you want to call it. But really, because words are, right, they're a construct that's pointing towards like honey, right? Like if I say the word honey to somebody who's never tasted honey or tasted one kind of honey, it's very flat and one-dimensional. But if I say honey to somebody that's like a beekeeper who has, over the years, for 30 years, they've been keeping bees, honey is like, it unlocks this whole, right? It illuminates differently for them than it does for somebody else. So words are pointers, right? Words are pointing. That's a plant, but we have to go beyond that. And words are pointing. The way I look at it a little bit deeper is like, what I'm trying to say is conveying how I feel inside myself to you. So it's trying to convey a feeling, which is this amorphous, fluid, unfolding, changing thing constantly. You know, I don't feel the same one moment to the next. So silence and just observing, the power to observe, that's one of the most powerful things there is. Because when you just watch nature, you can start to understand how things go together in a non-word format.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's one of the best things. I learned this from my dad. Is he would, like, when we were growing up and we were working on the car and we like couldn't figure it out, and I'd just be like, oh, well, like, well, do this. He'd be like, okay, let's just be quiet for a moment, and I'm just gonna look at it. And he would set the tools down and he would just look at it. He would just like be there and observe it and just watch it. And then eventually he'd like, oh, there we go. It's just that, right? So coming into that stillness or silence, it allows all of the noise to fall away, and sometimes the very subtle signals that tell you how to move through this will come through, right? And so cultivating silence throughout my day, right? This is a powerful practice a lot of people can do, is practice silence between things, right? And you can bring even one silent moment with a breath, right? It's just like take one thing and go, and that's it, right? That moment of pause, the pause is so powerful. Your power is in your pause, right? Not these, but you know.
That's great. That is really good.
Yeah. So it really is like silence is, and just letting things just speak in their natural universal language, which might be a look or a sound or a smell, or a display. There's so many other languages, and when we get caught up in just language, it's just words.
Yeah.
Well, then we're always thinking in words, and it's just like
Right.
Yeah, I love the poor translation quote, because it brings this idea that I've come across recently, and I wrote a little bit about it. And it comes from the Four Agreements, I think, or one of I can't remember the author's name. He has a lot of books, but he talks about how words are symbols.
Yeah.
Words are a bridge
Yeah.
of energy.
Words are a
They
bridge.
symbolize something, and so the poor translation comes into effect because your idea of this tree is completely different than my idea of this tree. They might be similar, but you could say this tree is something, and the way I view those words based on my experience is different. And so like I'll be like, what do you mean, bro? Like, and I'm having a challenging time like describing this, but the poor translation thing is so powerful because we all have different definitions for each word based
Right.
on our experience. And a symbol describes something so intricate and
Right.
so deep and detailed, like a plant.
Yeah.
There's so much happening in
With this
plant.
plant, if you're trying to describe it with words like where everything is located in space, you could never get there, right? If you're just relying on that, it's like I point to the plant and then you look at the plant as well, right? And if you're not looking at from my angle, but even your nervous system, the way your eyes receive things, totally could be different.
Infinitely vast.
It's-
different.
Yeah.
It's fascinating actually, and yeah, like silence tunes you into the subtle languages of nature, observing nature. It's really cool.
It
And
is.
you're great at being in silence, and we do practice it once a week.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
Awesome.
every Tuesday night at 7:30.
I mean I know a little bit about it, but we would love to hear and highlight your journey, because when I moved in, you kind of practice meditation,
Yeah.
and then we started doing Dr. Joe's work, and then now we're we've been cultivating our own practices. So where did you shift into practicing these things,
Yeah.
and why? So I guess give us a little background of your story.
Yeah. So really for me, it started, maybe we could start anywhere in the story, but we'll
Right.
start at kind of a critical juncture, if you will. I got divorced in 2018. I was together with a woman for 8 years. We were married for 5, and I was very much disconnected from my heart, and was not expressing just what I felt in here. It was more of like a logical way of approaching life, and so it made that relationship less deep and less connective, right? And she's a beautiful, wonderful woman, and nothing against her, but it just wasn't resonating for us. So anyway, we got divorced in 2018. I moved out. I moved to my friend's house for a period of time. He let me stay there. He was moving out to Texas, and he's just like, yeah, you can stay at my place for a couple months while I'm selling it. So I stayed there. He just let me stay there for free. I was able to take my cars there, and because I'm a car guy, so I have cars. But then I was just like, so I was sitting in my stuff. It was like an uncomfortable situation. And then I moved from there to my childhood friend and his wife let me come stay at their house for a few months. So I did that. And this is while the divorce, like we were separated, and then we finalized the divorce, and then I moved out of their house. But at his house, I found on YouTube, just randomly, I found it was like an autoplay after another video, Wim Hof breathing. So some people are familiar with it, some people aren't. It's WIMHOF. And doing that breathing, I was intrigued by it. I didn't think anything, because it was like the guy getting in a cold lake, and I was just like, I was like, what? Okay, I don't know, but why not? Why not, right? But so I started exploring that. I read the book that a guy who went to disprove him, he went to disprove gurus, and ended up practicing and finding there's substantial scientific evidence about this. Because at that point I was very obsessed with it's got to have evidence, it's got to have scientific backing, it's got to be, because I was all about science and critical thinking, and there is no God and there is no anything other than just this experience, and nothing means anything except the meaning we give it, right? But anyway, I started getting intrigued by this, and so I remember doing it talked about in the book, doing as many push-ups as you could, and then doing this 30 deep breaths, and then exhaling, and then doing as many push-ups as you could right after that. And it was you'll be able to do more. And I was like, no way. And I remember doing that, and I did I think I did 35 push-ups before doing this breath hold, and then I did 47 after. And I was like, that's totally wrong. I should be decreasing because of so I couldn't make sense of that, but it blew my mind. So I was like, okay, I'll go on this road. So I started just doing cold showers, turning the water cold, because it's cold showers, breath work, and meditation. And so those are kind of the pillars. And so I would do the breath work. I got to the point where I was probably doing the breath work 5 out of 7 days a week, 6 out of 7 days. I just got really into it. And I was because you do this breath work, you do 3 to 4 rounds of it. It's 30 deep breaths. And then at the last breath, you take an inhale, and then you just exhale to relax. And then I started getting breath holds that were over 3 minutes long with an exhale. I was like, how is this possible? And then and then you'll do meditation afterwards, and I started to see flashing lights behind my eyes. It was darkness, but then it was flashing lights. And then I just felt this level of calm and peace within my nervous system. I was just so calm and happy, full of light and joy. And anyway, so I had that happen, and so I kept practicing, and then I had kind of some weird, terrifying experiences where I felt like I was losing my mind, and I was not in a good headspace. And I was seeing this woman at that point it was just a very unhealthy connection. It was just very sporadic in how she'd communicate, and I'd go up to Park City to visit her, and she'd like be drinking, and she was a very severe alcoholic, and I'd never dealt with that before. I'd never experienced that, so that kind of was like very jarring. I just thought it's a very jarring experience. It's like, you know, waking up in the middle of the night, she's in the bathroom drinking at 3 a.m. So yeah, it like kind of stirred things up, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd like, I don't know, I was doing that breath work, and then what I remember was I was out on a hike. I was doing Mount Olympus. I hiked Mount Olympus, and I was coming down, and then I moved on from this relationship, and I was dating a different woman, and I was coming down, and like I don't know how to describe it, but I just felt all of a sudden, I just like felt this stillness within me, and like it's like I had like a series of thoughts that were just so profound, they kind of like stunned me, and I was like, oh my God, no matter what happens, I'm okay. And it was so, and I felt the beauty of nature and the love of nature, and I just started weeping because I like connected so deeply to something. I had no words or any sort of understanding. I was just like, I just have this overwhelming sense that things are perfect, right? And that no matter what happens, it's perfect, it's okay. And so I just was like, I kind of like let go. I felt myself let go, and I was just like, I was so just blissed out, right? I was blissed out for a while, like months. I remember being at work, and I was just like, things that would piss me off before, I was just like, nah, it's okay. It's totally fine. Totally fine. And then it was like, that went on for some periods of time. And then, you know, there were ups and downs, right? There were definitely some ups and downs. And like another one was that I had a relationship with this woman, and it was just like, it was the most love I'd ever felt before. But I was still like seeking other women. I was like pushing it away, and it was not, I couldn't settle with that feeling, because I was like pursuing like a particular definition of like what the perfect woman looks like. You know, which was so superficial. And this woman, beautiful woman, and just like the most kind-hearted soul. And so when I ended that, and then like things kind of kept going, and it was kind of a little bit on off. And then when I realized, I was like, oh, okay, I understand how profound this connection is. And then I went back to her and was like, you know, talking to her about how I felt, and it just wasn't reciprocated. I severed that connection through the way I had acted, right? And that just broke me. You know, that was like another point of change, right? Another inflection point. So I just felt like this overwhelming sense of just total annihilation, because I was just like the person that I have loved the absolute most, like just made me feel totally at home. Like that broke my heart, you know, and I became like very depressed. I became suicidal. And then at one point I attempted suicide, but it wasn't successful. And I don't need to go into the details. It wasn't like a graphic way. It was a very like subtle way to go, but I just like felt like an impulse was like, nope, this isn't what's happening. And from there, I was just like, okay, I got to change things. And so like I quit my job, and then went to a different job, and then was like, this isn't it, and quit that job, and just was like, I'm just gonna be for a while, because I just want to exist without needing to like have to always focus on doing something. Yeah. And so that feeling of like, I'm just gonna sit with my shit, right? I'm just gonna sit, and in varying degrees of success, right? Like sometimes I would distract with, I was drinking at that time, and I started drinking a lot more heavily. Like I was drinking at work at my last job, which I'd never done before. I took a flask to work and I was drinking in the bathroom. It was just like, that's not in my repertoire. But it was like coming into this being like, okay, well, I'm just gonna like be here with it and see what happens. And eventually it was just, it was a process, and it just happens, that's it unfolds, right? It does from this perspective, it does take time for these things to like release or be integrated, however you want to look at it. And so over time, I just started, I got back into the breath work, because I was like, I'd kind of like attached my identity to her. Yeah. And so I was like, when I lost that, I was like, well, that was the reason I was feeling okay. That's what I thought, right? That was a thought. And then it was like, okay, well, I'm going to just keep doing this. And I just would spend time in mountains and spend time in nature, in wild nature, right? That didn't have everything buzzing at me. Right. And because I'd had a profound experience in nature before. So I just spent a lot of time in nature, just hiking. And, I did kind of date on and off, and there were really profound connections that I had that taught me so much, right? Women that were just so kind-hearted and loving, ultimately not in alignment, but like they were just, they would show me kindness and love and ways of looking at things that were just really cool. And then I dated a woman for a short period of time that was like very much into meditating, and she would meditate all the time. She was like an hour a day. She was a registered yoga teacher. And she was so good at being silent and still. Like we'd go on hikes together. That was like how we met. She'd message me on Instagram, and then like we'd talked, and then we like met on our first hike. And she would just talk, or she would like listen to me, right? And just be silent. And then let me like, I was grieving, and she let me grieve, and she like held me, and she just met me. I was just like, this is incredible. Like a human being can do this. So she was the example of just unconditional love, right? Unconditional acceptance. So she was a very powerful teacher for me. Right? She taught me a lot. So yeah, these are all kind of different points along the way. And then I had just these moments where I would be like in nature, and I would connect, and I would start to feel this feeling of like warmth in my chest, and it was like overwhelming my body. And I'd wake up and I'd be listening to music, and it would just like, this softness would hit me, and it would just like, I would feel like I was melting in this feeling of love, just because there was stillness, just because I could rest, right? Because I didn't have to go to work. And my sense of identity didn't depend on my work, right? I was letting that go. And I mean, yeah, there was also part of me that was like, I didn't feel like working. So it's like, it's both. It was both an avoidance, but ultimately, you're avoiding one thing to do another, right? I can avoid sitting with my stuff and distract myself with things to do, like work, constantly. But I'm never going to be able to sit with what's there. I'm never going to be able to sit with my heart, because I don't have enough space to do it. Or time, space and time. It's the same thing, right? I look at space in my day. If I have a lot of space in my day, it's a lot of time. So having that is key to letting the waters of the soul still out, right? Like I think it's a Buddhist thing, is like, if you just let the mud settle, right? Water will be all muddy, but if you just let it settle, it sinks to the bottom, right? That's an analogy for that feeling. But it is like when you can settle and like not have to constantly be like, oh, I got to remember this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. It's just like you're go, 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 go. And you don't ever fully connect with that feeling of like total stillness. And I don't know how to put it. And that was the thing. It's like I started to connect with like a feeling of just total stillness. Total like rest. Total rest. Like there's nothing. And it was like when I'd touch these things, and sometimes I would be, just sitting in bed with my eyes closed. I would do like a yoga nidra, which those are really powerful, by the way. One of the most powerful tools there is, because they're just rest. But it's yogic sleep is what it is. And it's very yin to the yang of, like a Dr. Joe meditation, where it's like focused and goal oriented, although he's not totally, because he's a lot of space. But, like self-help, it's kind of the opposite of self-help. It's like self-relaxation. But yeah, I would be laying and I would like get done, and it would just like an ineffable, unspeakable peace. And I'd have my eyes closed, and it would like golden light would like it felt like golden light was filling my body. And I would just weep. I would weep because it was so beautiful.
Wow.
The feeling,
Yeah.
that was the thing, is like, I was like dropping out of this, like, I'm going to feel this.
Yeah, your heart.
And I started to feel that. And then you start to feel peace, like real meaningful peace inside of yourself, not just like outside.
Right.
Something that's totally untouchable, totally unchangeable, right? It's just the background that everything plays on. And so, yeah, that was so incredible. And then I read The Power of Now, and had like just, I would be reading it, I would be listening to it specifically on Audible. And Eckhart Tolle reads it.
Such a good listen.
So present that when he speaks, he also leaves a lot of silence between things, right? And that is so powerful, because it allows like what is there to sink in, right? It allows the words to sink into the soil of your soul. So he would do that, and I would just like, sometimes I'd pause it and just feel like it hit something so deep within me. It was like here, I remember feeling here and like moving up into my chest, and just like, oh my God, that's so much love, so much acceptance. And yeah, and then I had like, and it's funny because it's like, you want an awakening story. It's like, it's not a one and done.
Right.
For me, there were multiple moments.
Yep.
But yeah, then I had an experience driving. I'd gone down to Vegas, and I'd been practicing breath work. I'd gone to Arcadia Festival with you the week before in Vegas, and I'd gone back, and then I'd like had lunch with my dad or breakfast with my dad, and I just feel we'd had a really incredible connective conversation. And I was driving home, and I was like, and it's funny because during that time I'd been practicing the breath work in my kitchen at the hotel I was staying at, and I passed out doing that breath work and woke up against the cabinet, because I was like doing it, and I was standing there, and it's like something within me was like, you probably should sit down for this. Yeah. I was like, I ignored that. And I like passed out, and I woke up like kind of crumpled against the cabinet in the corner over here, and I was like, what? Oh. And then I like looked down, and I saw blood on the floor, and I was like, oh no. And I got staples in my head. It was a whole ordeal. Okay. But anyway, the next day or the day after that, I was on my way home, and I was listening to Hans Zimmer. This was like a bunch of his music, which has really been powerful for me. Like the movie Interstellar, it's just like something that hit me, and I'd like, there's a message in this movie for me, in each movie, and I could feel it here. It wasn't like a conceptual, it was like a knowing, and it would make me cry, because it was so powerful. But I was like feeling it, and I was feeling so much gratitude for my friends. I'd gotten off a phone call with a friend, Zoe, and I just was like, and then I remembered the woman that I loved, and I was just like, that feeling of love, I was like, what if I took that feeling and just fell in love with life in that same way? What if I felt like I allowed myself to fall in love without anything to catch me? Just total faith into nothingness, into life. And I did, and I like, I don't know how to describe what happened, but it was like the universe opened and I fell into it, and I just was like consumed by it, and my body, this was a very somatic experience, right? So this was like very intense physical sensation. My body just lit up. Like my breath had slowed way down. It had gotten extremely slow. And my car was on my car had autopilot. So, not something that like you want to tell people to do, but it's what happened. And I'm here to be authentic, and I'm here to be truthful.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I have this feeling overcome me, like I'd stopped, like I'd reached the bottom or top of a breath. I don't really remember. And it was like, I feel like I kind of remember it. I should have written it down, but whatever. And I like felt this kind of like I wasn't breathing, and like I needed to breathe, but it was like I was underwater. But then all of a sudden, like I did, and like something bloomed within me, and it was like in my brain or in my feet or something. But like I remember it lit up my brain to my toes, all the way down my spine, my root, my genitals, my fingertips, everything. All of a sudden, it just like went like full, like a full body, like waves of energy, like orgasm that I just couldn't understand. Yeah. And it was like total love. And I was like, it just engulfed me, and I couldn't do I became totally involuntary, this experience. I like was sobbing. I was sobbing, wailing, and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I felt myself as like, I understood the whole, like physically in the body, like felt the understanding of the perfection of everything. And I felt the universe, and I felt interconnected, like I'd been plugged into the universe, like with hardwired, Wow. And I just was like, total breakdown of any sort of concept. And like sometimes my mind would come in and try to make something the experience and like comment on it. And it was funny because my car would beep at me and put my hands back on the steering wheel. And that was like, something within me was like, oh, just relax the mind. So I'd relax the mind, and it would stop, and the car would just do its thing, which it's not supposed to do. Yeah. It's supposed to, like, after 20 seconds or so of not touching the wheel, it turns off. The system turns off, but it wouldn't do it. And this went on for like 30 or 45 minutes. Wow. And I was just like full body, just like, oh, and obviously when I'm wailing, I'm breathing at that point. So there was a point where I wasn't breathing for a long period of time. I don't know how long that was, but it was just, there was a sense of like not needing to breathe, because I was like, I felt that energy that was flowing through my entire nervous system was nourishing me. Right. And it was just total loving wisdom perfection. Yeah. And I felt like I'd witnessed the birth of galaxies, and just this effulgence of experience. So that was like, and I got, I was, the last hour of my drive is when that happened, and it was at night, and then I came home and he was home. And so I went and explained, him and a friend of his were home, and I went and kind of explained the experience. I was still kind of in it. And I was just like, I don't know how to describe it other than I can simplify it. It was like I was at the end credits of the most beautiful video game that I'd ever played. And I was like, I felt like I'd finished the video game. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. So that was just like that embodied experience. Very intense, very powerful. Yeah. And ever since then, it's like, it's become more and more subtle, right? And that's really like easier to maintain, I should say, because it's like, and then I'm not seeking like this peak experience, but I'm just like restful and peaceful for others. So that's really it's peaceful for myself and peaceful for others. Yeah. So then I can show up. So that was very long-winded.
No, that's awesome.
It was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I feel the power in that. Yeah. And I think I mean, that's why that question was wanted to be asked, because like we want to show people that it's not just like a lights on experience. It's like it can be. I've heard of experiences like that, but a
Yeah.
lot of times, like even for me, it's still moving. Like it's like the light is just getting brighter, you know, and it's showing me more, and I'm like, oh, that was not me. Like this is more me now, you know.
Yeah.
And so learning more and practicing more, holding more space for that to, I love that word you said, effulgence, what was it?
Effulgence.
Effold, I guess is the word, maybe the
Well,
shortened.
yeah, effulgence is it's like a luminance,
Oh,
like
okay.
a glowing luminance.
So it's exactly what I was trying to say. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I want to somehow like bring in to like how people can meditate, because that's like what's probably what we're most passionate about and what's changed our lives the most, right? Is the
Yes.
practice of meditation. So it's like
yeah.
we want to show people that you don't have to be a monk. You don't have to sit in a temple. You don't have to sit like this.
Right.
We enjoy it. And I didn't start by sitting like this. I
Yeah,
started
you're
by
just
sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
And like Dr.
Or
Joe,
laying down. Sometimes.
sure, if you're able to not fall asleep, you want to get to a place where the body or the mind's the body is asleep, but the mind is awake, right?
Yeah.
And so that hyper presence. So yeah, I guess like, what does your practice look like now? And obviously, as brief as you can.
Yeah.
And how do you cultivate bliss in your life through these practices?
Yeah, this is a good question. So for me, I really like first thing in the morning when I wake up is to just like take some deep breaths. You know, it's just like wake up and right, and
Audible exhale.
audible exhale, yeah, just like a sigh, because it's like it signals to my body that it's like I can just melt into the moment, right? And then I really love, I kind of do variations to keep it interesting for myself, because I tend to lose interest if I don't have some variation. But I like to go outside and, watch the sunrise happen for a few minutes. Sometimes I'll take a chair out there and just sit and just watch. And it can be very simple, right? Like to meditate, just even 1 minute. And like having a timer and setting a timer is a really powerful way, because it's like you can pick everything back up once you're done. Right. You don't have to,
Including the mind.
including the mind, yeah. So, but I'm gonna set everything down for 1 minute, right? And then just paying attention to the breath, right? At first, sometimes it can be helpful for people to like do deeper breaths. If their mind feels overactive, or maybe if they're feeling still, they just pay attention to what the breath is kind of already naturally doing, which can be kind of hard, because it's like the moment you bring attention to it, you start to like maybe slow it down or speed it up and interfere with it a little bit, so to speak. But that is like that moment of, okay, I'm going to spend 1 minute or 5 minutes just being consistent, and then doing that every day. And then just finding all these little moments where we can really like pay attention to our breath, the space that we're inhaling and exhaling. And that's a really powerful thing, is like paying attention to space, because that is like kind of we can say the highest teaching of meditation, but that's just it really beneficial, is paying attention to space or silence.
Space between thoughts.
Yes, exactly. So you find that there's like somebody still, there's awareness still, even when there's no thoughts.
Yeah.
Whereas it's like, I think, therefore I am, is actually backwards. It's like, I am, therefore thinking happens within I am.
I love that.
Right?
Whoa.
So it's like, there is the empty watcher, right? And that's why I love using this analogy, like I am the empty sky. Like it's that feeling of, what does the empty sky feel like? It has all the clouds pass through it, but it doesn't change the sky. Right? The sky is still just empty. It holds that space there for things to pass through it. And so it's like to allow oneself to become, ooh, this is a good one. For me, the word unhooked from thoughts, that was really powerful. thing that led into part of my awakening journey. It was like that word unhook from your thoughts. It was like, oh, like the thought, like, oh, there it comes, you know, and hopefully you're not having this dialogue of like words, there it comes, there it goes, but like you can feel it arise, and then you feel it kind of like pass away if you don't mess with it. Because like the thought can come up and it might be like very persistent and it wants you to engage with it, you know, like, you know, for me personally, it's been like the thoughts that are harder to deal with are like, you know, sexual urges. Like those feelings can come up and it's just like, it's hard to not get caught up in that and get pulled along by it, and rather than just like, oh, there it is. There it goes. Right? So yeah, just allowing yourself to have more and more moments of space throughout your day. And whenever you find yourself throughout the day, that you can take a few conscious breaths. Very powerful. And then another tool is like paying attention to the inner body, like the sensations in your toes. And I really do feel like this is coming back up for a reason. Yoga Nidra, great introduction to yoga because it's so easy and gentle, and it's not like a hardcore approach. So for those people who like, maybe they're just feeling totally overwhelmed, right? They're totally dysregulated. Their ADHD is, you know, this thing we call ADHD is really prevalent in their life. Maybe they're just, it's too much to try to like sit and meditate, but like having someone guide them can be helpful. You know, it's gentle, it's loving. And then breath work is a great entry point to meditation too, because that creates so much somatic experience, so much body sensation, that then you're paying attention to the feeling of the body rather than the thoughts of the mind. It's like stepping down a level from thoughts to feeling, right? And then it's more like, oh, I can feel vibration in my toes or like in my knee. So those are some ways that people can drop into meditation.
Beautiful. Yeah, because a lot of people say like, I can't meditate, you know, my ADHD brain, or, you know.
Yeah, which I'd identified with that for a while.
Me too.
You know, I was like, oh, this is my problem, and no.
Yeah, but
It's transient.
Mark, there's no right or wrong way to meditate, right?
No, I say that so much. It's true though. There's not a right or wrong.
Just sitting, just like becoming present, sitting down or standing there, just waiting.
Taming the animal, the mind.
right.
It's just
Or
sitting with
just settling it down, letting it settle down, right?
Yeah.
And it does take
can
time,
be
and it does
gentle.
take space to do that. Like you have to practice it every day, and you're gonna have days that are not the best, but every meditation is a good meditation. I cannot forget that. Like such a simple thing because but
I mean, these practices obviously do it, but what else brings you bliss?
Yeah. I mean, for me, snowboarding. That's like it's my art form, and I love that form of self-expression for me, because it's just like it's almost like dancing. Ecstatic dance is another one. Ecstatic dance really unlocked a lot for me because it was like, it allowed me to just like expression without words.
Yeah.
Movement without words. And so I could feel comfortable moving this body. So I could feel like I could flow, or just like, you know, how I wanted to like move, or like if I wanted to stretch in public, I could do that and start to just release thoughts of what other people think of me. They can think whatever they want, and I can feel comfortable, because if I'm just part of this whole natural experience, why would I like continue to like try to corral everything that I'm doing into this perfectly manicured box? Right. You want it to be there, you know, you're going to be an interruption sometimes. It's just the nature of that's the nature of being alive. Sometimes you're an interruption. You don't have to be an asshole about it. You know, you can be respectful and courteous, but like sometimes being a little bit weird is appropriate. It's the right thing.
I'd rather be weird than normal.
Exactly. And like, man, I can't tell you how many times I'm like at the resort and I'll just be like dancing and people are like, oh, I love your dancing. And I'm like, yeah, and the best compliment is when other people just start moving.
Yeah.
Because then I'm like, then it like frees them to just flow without words and without like an explanation of like, oh, I'm doing this because of this.
Right.
It's like, no, just act.
Yeah.
Right? Act from your heart. Sometimes.
All the time. I wanna just like end this by saying like my favorite thing about you, a few things about you is how you will do your breath work anywhere at any time. And I love it. Like you don't care because you know how important it is for you to breathe and to do breath work, and how it can, you know, change your whole state, and you can release anxiety with that. So I really love that about you, and then how you just you know, when I met you the first time, you gave me a super big hug, and you breathed in and you breathed out, and it was like, it just shifted my whole like thought process of a hug and like breathing. And I was like, what? Because when I did it the first time with you, I could barely like breathe. I was like nervous, you know. But now when we hug, it's like you gave me that space to open up and to breathe and to be like in peace and in that stillness, you know. So you hugging people that way, even if you don't really know them, can shift their whole reality and wake them up in a lot of ways. So I love that about you too. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. That's a good reminder, because that is like one of the fastest ways, because it's without words.
Yeah.
Right? Because everything else is like, we have all these words. It's like, oh, I've got to do this, but it's just like being that example of space and presence, and like being able to hold someone safely, and just like, for me, it's just like, I love you, brother. I love you, sister. That's just like it becomes a very safe space for them to exist and just rest. Because it's like, think of the, you know, if you were lost in the wilderness for a year and you came back to civilization, you just want to hug and hold somebody, right? Yeah, it's just like, let me feel okay. And I learned the Thich Nhat Hanh thing of like, take 3 conscious breaths when you hug someone. That was something that he had written.
Well, and you never used to hug people that way until you like had these experiences, right?
Right.
And then you just were like,
Yeah, I'm trying to
I was
remember,
never a
like,
hugger, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Wow, it's so cool to hear people's experiences of changing. Like, yeah, you've been through a lot of change, and because you weren't always into meditation, and
No.
yeah, that's beautiful. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Me too.
Thanks for coming on, dude.
Thank you for having me.
I love you guys.
Love you too.
Um,
Love you guys a lot.
It's pretty much our time.
Perfect.
That was 10 seconds?
It was 11 seconds.
Yeah, bro, get it right.
It is fast, yeah. When you get used to breath work and like doing like long exhales and long inhales, you just like,
It's insane.
10 seconds doesn't feel that long.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. Blissed Out Podcast. Jordan Rock, aka J Rock. I'm Zach.
And I'm Mike.
And we like to sing.
No, we're having more people on, so this is just the beginning, and we're stoked to see what's to come, and yeah.
Bye. Peace.
Great work.